We are joined now on the Damage Report by candidate for Denver City Council District 9, Candi, CdeBaca. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on. And so let's talk about your candidacy. What led you to want to join Denver City Council?
Denver's changing a lot here, and it's becoming a city for the wealthy. And I lost a lot of people in our community. We were pushed out through eminent domain. I live 3 blocks away from a major highway expansion, and that catalyzed my involvement in some of the activism here in the city. And then it just snowballed into a city council race.
So it's interesting because the first issue you bring up is actually related to several I want to ask you about. But the eminent domain that you're talking about there, obviously for the people who are pushed out, that's absolutely terrible. In general, across the city, is that an issue that people are paying attention to? How does the community actually respond to those sorts of efforts?
Yeah, it's become a major issue because the eminent domain abuse has gone beyond just this project. And so we're seeing eminent domain used as a tool to displace many people for many projects throughout the city. And people are starting to talk about it in a way I have never seen before in my life. But we're also getting pushed out by the artificial inflation and the cost of living here and stagnant wages.
So obviously, I think most people watching this are going to understand the stagnant wages and all that. But the artificial increase in the cost of living, explain that to us.
Yeah, I lived in DC for about 6 years, and I came back to find that the cost of living was the same in Denver as it was in DC. You can't make the same amount of money, but within a year or two, people went from being able to pay about $500 for rent to $1,500 to $2,000 for the same exact space.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and I can understand how that would be devastating, having lived in areas with much lower, much higher rent through the course of my life. Gentrification, I've read, is a significant problem in Denver, as it is in many cities across the country. If you make it into the city council, what do you believe that you would be able to do to help deal with that?
Well, a lot of people don't fully understand gentrification and how it's not about individual to individual displacement. It's about a package of policies that reorient cities away from serving their people to places that generate profit for the wealthy and for corporations. And so I think we have to pinpoint the policies that have been put in place over the last few decades to create the context we're living in that we're calling gentrification and dismantle those one by one. There's no silver bullet, but the primary function of city council is land use and zoning. And so that is the way you decide where we put people in a city, how people live, what kind of businesses come into those spaces. And so land use and zoning are going to be my top priority when I'm trying to address the issue of gentrification in this city.
And so I guess it is related to that. When you're talking about the expansion of highways and that pushing more people out, that is one way that cities have responded to increasing populations in the past. And I've seen that when I lived in Austin, that was an issue. In terms of transportation policy in a city growing like Denver, how would you like to see that put into place?
Well, we've kind of watched globally superhighways be taken down. We know that when they came in, it was after World War II, superhighways served a very specific purpose, and it would be to get military vehicles through our country, in and out of cities. And so now that that is no longer the need for them, and our planet is essentially on fire, we know that incentivizing use of cars is probably not the best types of solutions to be implementing at this point in time. And so getting highways out and figuring out how to connect our street grids, how to do multimodal transportation in a way that works for people should be the focus of transportation innovation nowadays. I would love to see our city rely more on the city and not federal funding or state funding to do public transportation, because with that kind of reliance on that type of revenue stream, urban contexts will never get what they need as far as public transit goes.
So I believe it's the candidate that you were running against actually had sponsored an urban camping ban that effectively, obviously, targets homeless people living in cities like Denver. What do you think about that camping ban, and should it be reversed?
Well, that's one of the reasons that I'm running against him. He has been in office for 8 years, and that camping ban essentially made it illegal to be poor or homeless in the city of Denver. And that's a trend that we're seeing across the country. And we often do that to populations that we don't find desirable, that we want to hide. And we've used that piece of policy to pretend like we've addressed our homeless situation when we've really just pushed homelessness to a different part of the area and out of the backyards of businesses. And so I think that it's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's a civil rights issue, a human rights issue. And there's currently a ballot initiative right now called Initiative 300, The Right to Survive, which is aiming to repeal that camping ban. There's a lot of money being dumped into the opposition of 300. I'm the only candidate in my race that's supporting 300. And that, I think, needs to come with a layer or several layers of real policy solutions for homelessness.
So Candi, so when it comes to the homelessness problem in that particular one, there's the landscaping of like LA. It happens in cities like LA too. Where are these, and we talk about where a lot of those homeless folks are pushed out and end up, being forced to certain areas. What's the landscape of the areas that these homeless folks end up getting pushed to in a city like Denver? Because it's different in every city,
Well, the interesting thing about what camping bans represent is a modern form of redlining, right? So we have to acknowledge the intersection of race and class when it comes to the people who are homeless. And we do have a big chunk of people who are people of color that are homeless. And so when we're moving them out of cities, out of the desirable spaces, out of business areas of rampant consumerism, what we're trying to do is bust up the communities because they do typically travel in community, and we're trying to scatter them everywhere. So right now, the complaint is that they're in neighborhood parks and neighborhood alleys surrounding the downtown area. But I've witnessed them trying to go anywhere where they feel like they won't be targeted. So I've seen people living on the river. I've seen people living in the furthest corners of town, in places that they wouldn't expect anyone to want to visit.
Candi CdeBaca, candidate for Denver City Council, District 9. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.